Yo, 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 what's going on? It's the NOC, the Nerds of Color, and we are back with another ShoPowSho. It's your boy, Kuya P, the Babinka boy, the Adobro, the leader of the Holla Holla Homies in the Center gang. And I'm back again with the ShoPowSho episode with the amazing aunties, you know, the Lechon ladies, the Dinaguan Destroyers, the Sisig Supremes. Let's give a shout out to Kataphorric and Viva. Valentina, what's up, ladies? Hey, good to see you, Kat. There's Tina. Man, back in it again. And we've taken a couple weeks off. We've had a lot of things going on. Just been so crazy. Yes. I know it's cray. Y'all ready to have another fun one today?
Super excited.
Let's go.
We're
just coming off of Filipino American History Month.
Yeah.
Asian, all Asian Pacific Islander History Month, but for us, big month.
Big month, but we celebrate all year, every day, because it doesn't have to just be in 1 month. We're going to celebrate all the time, and that's what we do here at the ShoPowSho. So, yes, so much fun, so busy because of that month, because of also the nature of our show. I've been busy. I've been on so many different panels. It's crazy, but we love it. We celebrate it, and so let's have some fun. Today, y'all, a shining superstar, got the 411 from my boy Zedric Restaro. Shout out to my boy Zed, previous guest on the show. He was like, if you don't get this girl on, bro, we ain't gonna be friends no more. He didn't say that, but we still gonna be friends. But he was like, yo, this chick, she's amazing. You need to check her out. You need to have her on. Joy Regullano, sorry if I brutalized the name, is a writer, actor, comedian based in LA. She just finished writing a PBS Kids web series. Her writing credits include a DreamWorks Netflix animated show dropping possibly in 2022. We don't know yet, but check that out when it drops. She also worked on The Healing Powers of Dude, several Sesame Workshop digital shorts. She was also a Sesame Street writing fellow. I love it because I love Sesame Street. Her TV acting credits include Crazy Ex-Girlfriend, Modern Family, Speechless, The House of Lies, and Supernatural. She has performed improv and sketch around LA at UCB and Second City Hollywood. Her YouTube sketch, White Fetish, went viral with over 1 million views and has been featured in the Huffington Post, Upworthy, and more. Let's bring her on. I'm super excited. Oh, I also want to get a shout out to Asian AF, which she contributes to. Let's bring her on. I love it. Miss Joy Regullano. Hey, welcome,
Joy. Thank you so much. It's my pleasure.
Super excited to have you on. Thank you for your time. Again, heard so much about you. Looking forward to talking to you and learning your story from the source. So can't wait. Let's have some fun. I'm going to toss it to Miss Tina with our first question out the gate. Let's go.
Oh, Joy, hello. We always like to start off because we want to know, where are you from? But like, where are you really from? And like, you know, where are your parents from?
Yeah, that's a good one. I grew up in Orange County, in Buena Park, which I like to call off-brand Anaheim. It's like the city you go to after you've like went to Disneyland 4 days in a row, and you're like, what else is there? I'm like, oh, let me go check out Ripley's Believe It or Not in Buena Park, or the Wax Museum. So that's where I grew up. And as far as where my parents are from, my mom grew up in Tondo, and my dad grew up in Bicol in the Philippines.
Awesome. So with that, I always like hearing kind of like the parents' love story, if you know it. Do you know how they met and how they came together? Because to me, we're like the manifestation of their dreams, their hopes, and their aspirations. And so I kind of like getting that to see, you know, if any of like what they were into flowed into you and then moving forward.
Yeah. I love that you just go right for the jugular. Both of my parents, they met. They were on the college newspaper, and they met at UST Medical School, University of Santo Tomas. But yeah, they were writing for the newspaper. And then I love that you just knew, like, you know, they were writers on the paper, and then I grew up to be a writer, but they were like, no, we didn't want that. But it was like, you know, it's in the blood, you know, it skipped them. They weren't able to pursue that, you know. And so yeah, here I am.
I love it. Yeah, awesome. I lucked out on that one.
Yeah, that worked out. Yeah, my dad, was like kind of, he was like from a darker, poorer background, and my mom has lighter skin. So I think that contributed to maybe, not being as acceptable to my mom's family or something like that. And so, but eventually, my mom's mom came around. But yeah, it was a thing.
Awesome. So we're actually going to take that path. So let's talk about growing up in California, born and raised, your journey from the seed to now. Let's start early childhood, going into middle school, high school.
Oh my goodness. Well, yeah, you're going deep. I grew up in Bonaparte, suburban life, very safe. Elementary school. Gosh, what about it? I guess it was like, maybe I grew up in a pretty diverse neighborhood, like lots of different demographics. Like my best friend circle was like one of them was Egyptian and Muslim. And then another one was African American or Black, and then another one was Greek or like maybe second generation Greek, and then another one was South Asian or Indian and Jainist, and then there was me, Filipino and Catholic. So to me, that was just like very normal. And then junior high, I stuck with the same crew. Like maybe there was a lot more Latinx people at Bonaparte Junior High or something. And then I went to Sunny Hills High School, which is what Better Luck Tomorrow is based on, that movie by Justin Lin. And so that was like heavily more East Asian, so a lot more Korean Americans and things like that. So that was a little bit of an adjustment, feeling like I wasn't the right kind of Asian and things like that. And a lot more emphasis, perhaps it was like a magnet school, so a lot more emphasis on AP classes and IB classes and college and all of that stuff.
I love it. All right, I got a ton of questions already off of all of that. So with that being said, what we celebrate, as you know, because it's a ShoPowSho, we celebrate our Filipino background and our diversity, and seeing that you grew up with all that diversity. What was like that for you? Because some of us don't always accept ourselves. We get assimilated into the culture. Can you talk in that regard? What was it like finding that you were Filipino? Did you like that you were Filipino? Because, sometimes we like, oh, we're not the quote unquote cool Asian, this and the third. And just how was that for you? We're curious.
Yeah. No, I mean, everything you're saying, I relate to. Yeah. When I was in high school, I didn't really have any words around it, but I just knew that like I was like embarrassed about, the language, like hearing Filipino in public or something like that. Or also like in my high school, like, was like I was saying, there's a lot of East Asians, and the Filipinos kind of had a reputation for like trying to be Black. So they would always be on the side, like listening to hip hop and like, doing whatever they were on the side. So I was like, I'm not like those people. And then I also didn't want to do Filipino cultural night because I was like, that's too much. So I was like, so I was just very self-hating and, very colonial mentality. But again, I didn't have any words for that.
Yeah.
I just thought that, I didn't like, always felt bad about my skin and being dark and, all being the wrong kind of Asian, like kind of the hierarchy of Asians, like, like we're the jungle Asians, or, we're not, when people think Asian, they don't always mean us. Right?
Yeah.
So until then I went to college, I went to UC Berkeley. And then I started taking ethnic studies, Asian American studies classes, and then I got a whole vocabulary around this. And then I was like, oh, this is colonial mentality. Like I didn't know. And it really opened my eyes to be like, oh, I had a lot of self-hate. And so then I was able to look at that. And then I became producer of Filipino Cultural Night. And fast forward to today, where I always, write about identity and being Filipino. And as far as Asian AF goes, I host Filipino AF, which is the Filipino offshoot of that. So yeah, it's like been a journey to become proud of my heritage and to reclaim it and all of that.
Oh man, I love
That's
that.
Awesome. So since you mentioned the writing, how did you start off with your writing? Was that something that happened kind of before college, as you were growing up?
Yeah, I was always going to be a doctor up until college. So my parents are both doctors. So I was going to take over my dad's clinic. It was a whole thing. But I always did enjoy, like I enjoyed making people laugh. And I did write for the school paper in high school and in college. And like one of my favorite exercises in school was always like, when you make a skit for English class or Spanish class. And I always really enjoyed like, vocabulary exercises when you had to like use a word in a sentence. And then I'd always like, I'm like, anyone can use a word right, but can anyone make it funny? So like, I would like lose points on vocab exercises to make a funny sentence or something, which is like dumb, but, but I guess it just shows where my mind was at. Thanks. Yeah, and so I went to UC Berkeley pre-med, and then I got a B on my first math test. I was like, oh, I'm not going to cut it. And so I started trying other things. I cycled through a bunch of different majors, and then finally landed on I finally tried theater. And then the other major I landed on was Southeast Asian Studies. But yeah, I always enjoyed writing, but it felt like it wasn't allowed, or like it wasn't okay or not acceptable.
Awesome. So in those early stages of writing, what made you fall in love with writing as a kid? So we know both your parents wrote, but did you like read some of their works? Did you get fond of that? And how did it become something that you wanted to do?
I would love to read some of my parents' work. I don't know if I should ask them if any of that still exists. Yeah, that's a great idea. I haven't read any of my parents' work. And I would love it if they saved some of their stuff, but I think the trans-Pacific move or the transatlantic move is like really hard.
Yeah.
Well, I guess they went across the Atlantic because they flew to New York. Actually, I don't know. I don't know what their flight path was. Maybe I really don't know. But anyway, oh my gosh, where was I? Oh yeah. What did I like about writing? I like making people feel. So like, I mentioned I like making people laugh, but I also like to move them, and when that feeling at the end of a movie or at the end of a story, and you're just like, oh, I like felt things, I think, especially us as Asians, but in society, people generally try not to feel that much. They just deal with stuff.
I love feeling.
Yeah, right. And it can be hard to allow ourselves to do that, but yeah, that's what I love about writing, and also kind of the also telling a story, or like telling a point of view that doesn't normally get to be out there. So like writing about my parents, or like writing about a disenfranchised POV in society or something like that, like being able to give them a voice, or give me a voice. My voice isn't heard in society. No, like everyone has their own specific story or point of view to tell. So I always really encourage people to get out there, because no one can write your story like you can.
Gotcha. Did you? Oh yeah. Did you dive going back to like the early childhood, like you were saying, you kind of felt you didn't really connect to your Filipino self until like even more so when you did in college. So like, did you come in eternally and with the writing? Because for myself, I got into comic books and art, and then started making my own comic books because there's that bullying, and that's how I found creativity, because of that outside source. So that's where I put myself into the page, into the paper, and writing my own stories. Was that the same for you in a way? So like you said, you kind of found your voice in your own stories there. Did that mirror a little bit?
Yeah, kind of. The other element of writing, I think, is also there are some things that I personally need to work out. And so I write about it. Like my parents' stuff. A musical that I've been working on is called Supportive White Parents, about an Asian girl who tells her parents she doesn't want to be a doctor anymore, and they're very disappointed. So she wishes on a shooting star for supportive white parents. So that is something that I myself have been working through, of like feeling, upset that my parents are disappointed, and feeling bad that I don't want to be a doctor, like wishing that I could have been who they wanted me to be. And so, yes, like kind of taking these real life emotions and frustrations, and like, because when you write, you also like write from the other character's point of view too, because you have to write their dialogue, and you have to like give them an arc. So you have to get in their mind too, of like, why are they this way? So it really does help you work through things.
I love it. You know what? Let's take a pause on that one. So I like to inject little life lessons as we do these now. So at this point, with what you kind of just said, what would be a life lesson that you would give to like a burgeoning writer out there that's watching this, with your journey at this point, in regards to when you're young? So you find something you love, that you can express yourself because of what you're experiencing, how you kind of turn to writing. What would be like a lesson that you would give like a young person out there watching this right now in regards to your journey?
A lesson, maybe something like, you deserve to be seen. Your voice deserves to be heard. So I think, especially as Asian Americans, as women, sometimes we are told that we are not worthy in so many ways in society, maybe not even that explicit, but the ways in which we're not seen, and we're not represented across, not just in media, but in textbooks and in history and schools, so like, just to really be okay, not only to be okay with being seen, but that you deserve it, and that what you have to say is really important, and worthy. Is because I would say that like my first couple years of acting class were just like being okay, being seen, or being myself in front of other people. And I mean, like I said, I think that's a human thing. We all, except for some blessed few who just kind of are okay with being themselves from the beginning. Like most people have to go over that hump, but I would say Asian Americans in our society especially kind of have more of that hump in general to go over.
Oh yeah.
Awesome. Oh, to piggyback off of that, so since you kind of brought it up, and I always like to ask, you know, being an actor and being a writer, particularly for media, it's a lot of straight white guys. And what have been some difficulties, if you have experienced any? I know you have, being you know, a person of color and being a woman in those kinds of, I guess,
Spaces.
Thank you. I blanked.
Thanks. Yeah, I know. I'm like, I won't name any names.
No.
Yeah, this is a safe space. But
Safe
you know,
space.
like I do think that, you know, the industry, obviously, especially post 2020, is like very aware now of this like lack of diversity, and they really are trying. But the way they correct it is like not quite the way yet. Like it's like like all the people at the top are still white, right? Like, you know, when I'm interviewing for jobs, showrunners often all white, execs all white, and then but then it looks like it's 50-50 in a diverse mix, because it is. Like the lower level writers are all women or women of color, or you know, or people of color. So like it looks good demographic wise, but like the power balance is all off, because it's like the people at the top, the ones running the show, the ones hiring, the ones who decide whose voice is right for the show and what the show should even sound like, those are still white people, and often men. And I think that it's hard too for us to say anything, because here we are just trying to get our foot in the door, you know? So even me, I'm sitting here being like, well, I want to say something, but I'm still working my way up, you know? So I'm like, when can I, like, in 3 years, can I like tell Variety to do an expose on this or something like that?
Awesome. I love it. Good stuff. So I'm gonna take us back into this therapy session. I know it's therapy when you're, because we're hitting stuff from back in the day, and you kind of already touched upon a little bit with like your parents becoming a doctor, and then you know this story you have with supportive white parents, or supportive it was supportive white parents, right?
Oh yeah, supportive white parents, yes.
So so let's go back into like high school, going to college. It's one of our popular questions we ask all the time, because as you know, as Asians, sometimes they don't want us to follow the arts. You later got into the arts. What was that like for you? I think you said you did try to follow that medical path, and then till you found your own path. Can you just talk about that period? So what did you want to do before they kind of maybe pushed you into that? Like, did you initially have like a plan until they influenced your plan a little bit, but then you kind of maybe went back to it? I don't know. Can you tell us that college decision to then going to college and then you finding, you know, what you wanted to do?
Yeah, that's a great question. Yeah, in high school, I think I had an inkling that I really liked cartoons and writing and things like that. Like I watched Nickelodeon well into my teens. Like I'd be like 15 or 16 and my friends would be going out on Friday night. I'd be like, I gotta watch Invader Zim and Fairly Odd Parents tonight. Like I can't go out. Sorry.
My stories.
Yeah, I know. I gotta watch Danny Phantom. You know, all that stuff. I'm dating myself. But yeah, I did. And you know, my favorite movie was Iron Giant. And I did know at that time that I was interested in writing for cartoons. But you know, my sisters, bless them, they were young too. They didn't know, but they're like, you have to know how to draw to write cartoons. I was like, oh, okay. And so I like took art classes, and my parents did pay for art classes for me in high school, but I didn't like drawing at all. Like, I'm like, this is tedious. And of course, you know, now that I'm a grown up, now I know you don't have to know how to draw or like drawing to write for cartoons. But back then I was like, well, maybe I'm just not cut out for this. But I did ask my dad if I could go to an animation camp. Like I think UCLA was hosted some sort of animation camp or something. I asked my dad if I could do that in high school. And he was like, you know, this is like a lot of money for something that isn't going to be your career. So is this going to be your career? He was like testing me, I think. And in the moment I'm like, gulp, like, I'm like, no, of course not. No. And then, so he's like, oh, okay. And I think at that time too, my family, even though my parents were both doctors, there was like a lot of medical problems in the family. And so we didn't have as much money to spare back then as well for things like that. So I'm trying to be charitable to my family. So, so yeah, so, you know, that was kind of, it was a part of me that was there, I think, but it was like kind of always like shoved down. Like it was like, well, you know, maybe it, whatever, like this part is like, I'll sequester it and then like shove it down. But then in college, yeah. And then I went in pre-med and I chose UC Berkeley because it was like, oh, it's a good school for, you know, sciences and blah, blah, blah. But I think in the very back of my mind, I was like, but it also has a lot of majors if I change my mind.
Good one.
Yeah. Cause you know, I had some other choices, but I was like, this one has the most majors though. And so, so I went there. And then, yeah, I tried math and chemistry and all that stuff. And I mean, I could talk to you about like, I don't think that our school system sets us up to succeed in college math and science either. I'm sure I'm preaching to the choir, you know, like they teach us to do like rote arithmetic and to memorize things. And when it comes time to do proofs and to think creatively about math and do applied things, like we don't have the tools. And so you get to college and it's just like, I'm bad at this, quote unquote, when it's like, you're just, you know, it's like any other skill is like, you have to spend the time to get good at it. But anyway, regardless of that, I didn't want to spend the time to get good at that. And then, so, yeah, so then I tried, there's this Asian American theater group on campus called Theater Rice, and they had been tabling out on campus. I don't think it exists anymore, but they were tabling and I took a flyer and I showed up to the club and then, and yeah, I went to a meeting. It was great. They put on shows and that really like, I think built my confidence. Like it was a safe space because it was like a whole bunch of other people like me, like people who were in sciences and like engineers at UC Berkeley, but like having this like hobby that we were all really passionate about. And so from there, I was able to grow my skills enough to like audition. I was too scared to even audition for like the beginning acting class at Berkeley, but that club really helped me be okay, like be not scared of that. So I did that. Yeah, I forget where I was going with this, but yeah, when I told my parents that I didn't want, that I changed my major, it was this, you know, it was a whole thing. My dad didn't talk to me for a few months. But you know, I also wasn't living at home. So, I mean, I think, and you know how parents are, maybe a lot of Asian parents are not that communicative. So maybe it just happened that he didn't talk to me for 8 months, but I think it was also maybe a little bit of a choice.
Yeah.
But yeah, I second guessed myself a lot though. Like I would constantly look back at, oh, maybe I can just do public health. Like maybe I can major in public health and be a hospital administrator, you know, something is still peripheral to medicine, or maybe I can major in psychology, or, you know, or maybe I can do post-bac. Like I even looked up post-bac, maybe I can do pharmacy, you know, so I was like a lot of back and forth too. It wasn't just a one day I was like, I'm doing it, I'm living my dreams. It was like, okay, I'm doing it. Oh, but I don't know. And one thing I did though for myself was I made my Chem 1A, I made it pass, no pass. So I was like, if I decide to go back to medical school, then I would have to take this class again. And then, so that really did stop me from doing it again. But I thought about it a lot though. And even after graduating, my parents would offer things like, you know, if you go to pharmacy school, we'll not only pay for it, we'll also give you living expense. Like we'll just give you a salary, you know, like, cause you're working a restaurant job, Joy, like, why don't you spend those 30 hours a week on school? That can be your day job. Like they bargained with me over the years and I would seriously consider it. Cause I was like, well, that is true. Like I am spending 30 hours a week still doing not what I want to do. But yeah, luckily things started to happen for me. So I haven't had to take that offer yet. So we'll see.
Yo, I love that. Thank you so much for sharing that, because I think we have all gone through that. I think it's a story we can all relate to, and to have that courage to just speak your heart when it's the people that we love, you know, that, you know, this isn't where my heart's at. This is kind of what I want to do. And so for you to have that courage is just amazing and inspiring for those that are afraid to say that. Because we have our own paths. We love our parents, but we also have something that we want to do. And I congratulate you and applaud you for doing that. So you find yourself and I would assume like the community helps build you into this. Because again, we're kind of afraid. It's kind of hard to act and speak and give our voice, you know, especially when we're finding our voice. Like you found your voice to do it and find yourself in this while you're in school and to kind of start pursuing it. But then you need that help from that community. So can we talk a little bit about, you know, just diving into that? Actually, even before that, before we get into that, I want to talk about, because you're in college now and touching back upon our Filipino-ness And you said that it was until college that you really kind of found yourself discovering yourself more and taking pride in yourself more. Can you talk in that regard? What was kind of the kick of the ball that got that rolling when you were in college to be like, identifying yourself and taking pride in yourself?
Yeah, it's hard to pinpoint what specific thing it was. I think being away from home, I took all those things for granted, all the things that I had my whole life, like Filipino cooking and, hearing the language all the time. And then I went to Berkeley and lived in a dorm, then it was like going from having it all the time to like never having it. I'm like, oh, like, this feels, I miss it. Like, yeah, I was like, oh, like, yeah. And then, I started dating a Filipino guy, and then he was from Daly City. So then
Daly City, I love it.
Yeah.
Shout out Daly City.
Yeah, shout out. So then we'd go visit his family. And in Daly City, there was like lots of Filipino restaurants, and wanting to learn more
Little
about
Manila.
Yes. Oh my gosh, have you ever been to Little Ongpin? Wait, is that what it's called? They have this thing called Coco Cha-Cha, which is kind of like Halo Halo, but yeah, it's amazing. But anyway,
Okay.
yeah, so I started missing it. And then I think it was also like, if we really want to get into the psychological bit of it, like I used to be really close with my dad. I hope he never listens to this. I used to be really close with my dad. And so it was a really big blow when he didn't talk to me for those amount of times. And I think it was especially, we especially had that bond because I was like, he was wanting me to be a mini him, like I was going to take over his clinic and everything that he's achieved in the US, And so kind of wanting a way to connect with him or like all that. And so I started taking like Tagalog or Filipino and Southeast Asian studies classes. And yeah, I don't think I realized at that time it was me trying to connect to my dad. But what was that?
Trying to come back.
Yeah.
I feel that.
Yeah, and I didn't realize it until I went to therapy later when my therapist was like, oh, do you think that it's because you're trying to connect with your dad? And in the moment, like my therapist is like a white woman. I was like, that's so racist. Like, can't I just like want to like study my heritage? Because that was something that came up too in Southeast Asian studies. Like a lot of the professors were white. I could talk about the history of how Southeast Asian studies as a discipline came up, but it has very white origins. And so they would be like, they'd kind of look down on heritage learners or something. They'd be like, oh, you're not trying to learn something different. You're just trying to learn something you already know or something like that. And it's like kind of this lack of understanding. Of
wow. Yeah.
It is. Yeah. Right.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's
so I
fascinating.
I know. Oh, maybe I'll go into it. But yeah, so I kind of had that against my therapist for a bit of like, that's rude. Like, of course I want to learn about my culture. But then, after thinking about it, I'm like, no, I think at least a part of it was trying to connect back to my dad.
She was on the right track, but it was raising flags.
yeah, exactly. It was triggering.
Yeah.
No, I feel that virtual hugs on all that all the way around though, because it's hard and it can be difficult, especially with the circumstances. Like I feel that I've been there with my family as well. Thank you for sharing that. Because we're going through it, and that's why I want people to feel when we talk on these topics, so they can relate and understand that you're not the only one. We're everyone does it and experiences it. So yeah, man. So going back to college and you're finding about yourself in our culture, but just that further diving. It's that like the first time you're on set when you get bit by the bug. In regards to acting, the acting bug. So just getting further into your creativity and finding your voice through the medium of, I would assume, theater and improv and writing and filmmaking in college. If you can expand upon that, going and then leading out of college.
Yeah, totally. Well, I mean, I really appreciate what you were saying earlier about, having the strength to tell your family. And I don't even know if I call it strength at that time. It was more like the callousness of youth. Because I think, the part of your brain that like understands consequences doesn't fully develop until you're 27, I think.
Yeah.
So yeah, at that time I was like not thinking of like I'm choosing something for the rest of my life, or me telling my parents this will have consequences. Like I don't think I thought that far. So it didn't feel that brave in the moment. But now looking back, yes, I do think that it is scary, especially as an Asian American, to say that. Because I knew a lot of people that got cut off. And luckily I didn't. Luckily my parents were at least loving and still in that way. But yeah, so I writing was sort of it was sort of more acceptable than acting in my family, because at least writing is still somewhat scholarly, or I don't know, whatever, academic or something like that. So I wrote for the Daily Cal at UC Berkeley, and I wrote for the entertainment section. And so I'd like get these I get to interview like directors, writers, actors, and things like that. And one of the interviews that I did was for the movie Forbidden Kingdom. I don't know if you remember that. It had Jet Li and Jackie Chan.
Jet Li, right?
Yeah.
I think Jet Li.
Yeah, throwback.
Yeah.
yeah, exactly. And so the director of that, he also directed The Lion King. And so he was like, just, it was really cool to hear the stories. And in that interview, I was like, oh, I don't want to be on this side of the table. Like, I want to be on that side of the table. And then also through Theater Rice, I put on a play that I had written and acted in called I Won't Miss You. And it was about my friend in high school who died in a car crash, but we maybe had crushes on each other, like who knows. And so it was kind of like a will they, won't they, except that one of them had passed away. So he would visit me as a ghost. But I put that play up. And then the audience loved it. They laughed, they cried, all that stuff. And I'm like, oh, like this is, I want to do this for the rest of my life. Like whatever this feels like is like crack. Like I have to, there's nothing else that I would rather do. I don't know what else I want to do with my life, if not this. And so then I started that summer, I applied for internships. In the entertainment industry. But it was my first go at it. I had no idea what I was doing. So I had an interview with The Daily Show. Back then it still had Jon Stewart. Again, I'm dating myself. And I was like, oh my gosh, like I would love to go out there. Like, oh, but I didn't know how to do an interview. So I like blew this interview. First of all, I didn't even realize it was Eastern time. So I was like, oh shoot, it's Eastern time. Like, so I had gotten the times mixed up. So anyway, so I didn't land that. But the next summer I landed an internship at Nickelodeon. So it was like my dream job. I got to intern for Fairly Odd Parents, which is a show I had been watching for 10 years. I watching it since I was 10 and Timmy Turner was 10. And I told them that on my first day on the job, and they're like, don't tell us that. We feel really old. But that was my first industry thing. I interned in production for Fairly Odd Parents / Tough Puppy. It was the same team. And then the next summer, or during the school year, it was really hard to find internships in entertainment at Berkeley. Like when I realized that this was what I wanted to do, I'm like, oh, Berkeley is like the wrong school for this. Like this is like away, because I had also had the chance to go to UCLA, but I was like, nope, too close. And so I applied to transfer to UCLA, but I think the amount of transfers they accepted were like comically tiny. Like it was like maybe like the amount of fingers on one hand or something like that. So I didn't get approved for transfer to TFT, their film school. And so I interned at Viz Media, which is an anime company. We're in San Francisco. Yeah, maybe you're familiar. So I interned there during the year, and I took the BART or whatever across the bay. And then I just moved home. Luckily, my parents lived in Orange County, so I was able to commute to LA. So that is totally, kind of a home field advantage. I don't know what you call that. Like I was, some people have to pick up and move across the country and live with strangers, and it's really hard. But I was very fortunate and privileged to be able to do that and to commute for a year, and get used to start auditioning. My parents helped me out with classes as well. Like they, because they're Asian, they approved of education. So they're like, well, if you're going to be doing this, at least take classes in this. So they paid for classes in improv and sketch comedy and all that stuff. So I was able to work on my craft as well.
I love it. Oh, there's so much stuff there. So it started in college with the writing, and then you started taking these other classes. What was it like just going from like writing to acting, and like, do you love certain things more than other things? And then improv, live performance with improv, because you're coming off the top. How was just all that transition? Because this whole time, as you were saying, you were coming into your own. You're not wanting to be that. You're wanting to chart your own path outside of the medical profession and being and following your father's path. What was that like? It has to be, I'm sure, difficult and hard, and we have the community to support that. What was that? Do you like certain things more than others? And so you did your performance that was kind of like the crack that you said that you just had to get more of it. Just talking on that regard. And so writing to then acting, because how does one do that? I get that asked all the time, but I kind of want to hear your story in that regard to just how does that one do that, especially when we're trying to find ourselves. So do just boom, here's me, hello world, accepts me, or was that a slow process, and what made it finally click for you?
Yeah, I definitely think it was a slow process for me. So I was always okay with being a writer, and it was just a jump from like maybe more journalistic writing or like academic writing to like purely entertainment plays. And how the jump from writing to acting, it was almost more like the universe had that in mind for me. I say that because I applied for playwriting, didn't get in the first time. So while I was not in that class, I was like, well, what am I going to do? So I auditioned for acting class, and then I got in. And then for screenwriting, it was very impacted because the film studies major at Berkeley is tiny, and they reserved it for film studies major. So I applied for that. Get ready for it. 6 semesters in a row. Wow. Never got in. And so in the meantime, I was like, okay, I guess I'll just take acting classes. So I was like taking acting classes, having fun. And improv is kind of like writing on your feet, like you said.
Yeah.
And yeah, it kind of is that the instantaneous laughter. And it also kind of just helps you build your craft too, when you're just like out there every night or however often you do it, to just like knowing what the audience likes and stuff. Like it's almost like building writing skills. But kind of a similar thing happened when I came out to LA. Like I was taking improv classes, and I was trying to go up the back end. So I was trying to be a PA, and then maybe writer's assistant, script coordinator, staff writer, go up that way. And every time I applied for a PA job, and it was on the shows that I entered on, they're like, "Oh, we love you. Like maybe we'll see you Monday." They never hired me. I never got those jobs. But in the meantime, I got an acting agent from an improv class, or from a writing class I was taking. And then I booked 3 like small roles, like 1-liners or 2-liners or something. I booked 3 of those that season, like that fall. So I was like, okay, I guess I'll like act. So it kind of like, but I was still writing on the side. And so like, but it was like maybe like I want to say like 6 years until I got the Sesame Street Fellowship. So it was like just many years of like, I guess I'll just do what the universe like has in mind for me. But keep working on my craft on the side, kind of thing.
I love
following
it.
the doors that open.
Yeah. Yes. Exactly. Yes.
Yeah.
Wow.
I love it. Yeah. So going with that, I want to stop it again for another life lesson. Another pause to the story. With all that being said, you've gone through all this evolution like a Pokemon. What would you say? Can you pull from that was very beneficial that you would recommend in all those parts of that journey to anyone listening again that's watching this? Like, it was good to take this class because it helped with this. Would you recommend improv to that actor? Did that help you as an actor? And those screenwriting classes, did that help you with your writing? Any of that part of that journey thus far we can like, throw a life lesson onto it for our watchers right now?
Yeah. I always like to say, become so good that no one can deny you, because there's a lot of things that are out of our control, right? Like when people don't hire you as a writer or as an actor, or whatever, like there's a million things that they could be looking for that you're just not, for whatever reason. But if you are just really good at what you do, no one can ever take that away from you. So yeah, like all the classes you can, everything that appeals to you. I know some people take improv because they feel like they should. And I'm guilty of that. Like I took so many like character classes, like developing characters, and it's something that I've like enjoyed and I'm into and like is interesting. But I like feeling like I should want to write for SNL, or like that I should want to do characters. And it's something I'm still working through. I'm like, do I want to do that? I don't know. But like, I don't right now. I think my passion is more towards narrative storytelling. Yeah. So I think in a similar way, like a lot of actors take improv because they feel like they should. Yeah. But if you're not into it, like it'll show up, you just won't work that hard at it, or you won't like it, or you won't be focused or something like that. So try it out. If you don't like it, you don't have to beat yourself up if you don't like it that much, like there's so many ways to make it in the entertainment industry, and so many pockets, and maybe that's just not your forte, and there's so many other things that you could enjoy.
Awesome.
So when did things kind of start popping off for you?
Yeah. Let's see. I always booked enough. Like I always like to say that I booked enough to make holding down a day job hard, but I didn't book so much that I couldn't have a day, that I didn't need one. And so that was kind of like many years of that. Like I worked in restaurants for like almost like 9 or 10 years or something. And even to this day, I still think about going back, but my therapist my boyfriend are like, no, you don't need it, but but I miss it.
You don't
I
need
love
it,
food.
Kat.
Hey, hey.
Is that familiar to you too? So
I'm her therapist boyfriend.
Yes. No, I mean, I feel you. And I think especially like, if your parents are like, maybe they have this like poverty mindset or this fear of they versus abundance mindset and stuff, because they have the trauma of not having had enough in the Philippines, so they feel like it will always be like that way forever. And here in America, we're trying to have abundance mindset and all that stuff. So I think it makes sense that we can always be worried that there won't be enough money, and that's something you have to actively like kind of push against. I think often that fear. But where was I on that? Oh yeah, okay. So I booked, like there was one, I booked a Progressive commercial. Oh, that was so much money. It like really helped me a lot. So as far as writing, I guess things kind of like started popping like a little bit after the Sesame Street Fellowship. It was like kind of like I got that Healing Powers of Dude writing job. And that was also like, that was like the baby staff writer job, right? But thank God for unions, because it was like so much more money than I'd have, like, 1 week of money was like as much as I made the whole month at a restaurant. So that really helped of being like, okay, like, maybe I don't need to go back to grad school, or, maybe I'll be okay for a little bit, and being able to take my focus off of like just survival, and then towards like getting to the next level and stuff. And then, but along the way, I've always felt like, when will the next one when will I get the next one? And I feel like that never really goes away, because I've talked to even like, people that are so further up in their career, and even sometimes they're like, God, who knows what's next?
Yeah.
So this is a career that we've kind of chosen in a way. But yeah, maybe around like kind of Sesame Street and like Healing Powers of Dude, then it was like, oh, maybe I'm going to be okay. Like maybe I'm making enough money and things are fine.
Awesome. So I want to ask you about being an API actor, being one myself, and going to audition and getting used to the nose and all that, and just trying to find a voice and taking on roles that aren't us, and still submitting anyway because they're not giving it to us, and so you still try. How was that for you? And have you ever found yourself like in a situation where I found myself in, where I took a voiceover gig? And it was when I got in there, they're like, can you sound more Asian? And that was like one of the biggest wake up calls and slaps in the face I've ever experienced. Because I was just speaking, I'm like, I am Asian. What are you talking about? They were looking for that stereotypical Asian, and I didn't know how to respond to it. And I ended up just kind of giving something stereotypical that I could think of just to finish the job, because I'd already accepted, got the check, already was paid for it and everything. But it was so cringy and difficult and hard for me, as an actor. And it kind of just drove I will say it did give me fuel for everything else that I did later on in regards to finding representation for myself and for my people and all that, and what I wanted to do as a filmmaker. Did you ever experience that? And then because I applaud, and you had already made mention of this earlier, that's what you also write as well, from your experiences. And I love that. And I want to support that with everything I can as well, because we need that voice. So can you just talk along those lines, if you ever experienced that, and then giving representation through your writing?
Yeah. I've been fortunate in that a lot of the stuff that I've booked is like, I'll come in and I'm like the Asian choice. Like, I don't usually book roles that are like call for Asians, because I think, what we're talking about, I don't have that East Asian look as much. So for the most part, I'm like a quirky side character that happens to be Asian. Or it was funny because I was small and Asian or something like that. So I haven't been asked too much to be more Asian or to play stereotypical stuff. But there was one where like for Modern Family, they had called me in a few times for like various roles over the years. And then one day they called me in for Student 2. And then it was one of those times where I walked in ready to read Student 2. And they're like, oh, could you also read this? Like it was like they were casting 2 roles on the same day. It was kind of busy. I was like, sure. So the role was Sujata. So I was like, sure. So I like read. So I read that, and then they offered me Sujata, and then didn't change the name. But like it's like that is like I think traditionally South Asian Indian name.
Yeah.
Yeah. So the lines weren't at all about that. Like it was just like a character name. But I mean, that was interesting. Like my friend who is Indian, when she watched that episode, she like laughed at it. She's like, "Oh, your character's name is Sujata. That's funny." And then I did get called in. Like there was a pilot a few years ago that was about an Indian American family or South Asian, and they called me in, and I was like, maybe in the tiniest headshot form, I could look Indian. Like if they were just scrolling really fast and they didn't look. But it was one of those times where I came in and everyone else was Indian at the audition, of course. And then this was a role that it was important that it was that way because it was a family. But it was funny because at the bottom I like did not know where this casting office was, and it's the same office as Fresh Off the Boat, I think. So like an Indian girl that was walking out was like, "Oh, you reading for Fresh Off the Boat?" And I'm like, "No, I'm reading for for the other pilot." And she's like, "Oh, okay." Like like we both knew I wasn't right for this, and then I went in for it, and then as soon as I walked in, the casting director was like, "Oh, we're only reading scene 1." But I knew they weren't only reading scene 1 because I heard before me they were reading scene 1 and scene 2. They'll say that when you walk in and they know immediately you're not right for it, and they don't want to waste anyone's time, but they also don't want you to feel bad that you drove 30 minutes in traffic to not audition. So anyway, so that I guess that's like that's when I know it's not right. But I've definitely heard a lot of horror stories. And then I guess as a writer, I've sort of experienced that of like, when I didn't get into screenwriting class in college, the professor I said, "Oh, I think I want to write a story about my dad. Like he experienced all these things in the Philippines, blah, 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 blah. Martial law, blah." And the screenwriting teacher was like, "Oh, but what about like Philippine folktales?" And I'm like, "What?" Like that is not like, I guess in a way that would have been more Filipino. Like she didn't say, "Can you be more Filipino?" But it was coded like that, right? Like it was like not interesting. My dad's story is not interesting enough or something like that. And then there was a time where I got to play on Crazy Ex-Girlfriend, Ruby Chan, like like Josh Chan's cousin. That was awesome. But I have to say, when I was like reading through the audition list, like some of my dear friends were on it, but they were like not Filipino. They were another kind of Asian. I was like, if someone else gets that's not Filipino, I'm gonna flip this table. Like it was just like there are so like even now there's a little more, but back then it's like way fewer roles that are specifically Filipino. So I would have been like really mad. Oh, sorry, I just remembered a time. Okay, so I shot a World War Z promo as background. Like we were playing Indonesian background, but pretty much everyone was a Filipino. Like everyone. I think Filipino is often like in Miss Saigon, right? We're kind of the utility Southeast Asians. We're like we out here and we brown and we're actors or whatever. So we're I did feel a little weird about that. Like they're like, "Oh, can you improvise just like yelling stuff in Indonesian?" Of course, none of us knew Indonesian, so we just yelling stuff in Filipino, and I don't think that promo even aired anyway. But that was a time where I did feel conflicted. I was like, "Oh, like did we take these roles away from Indonesians? Because as few roles there are for Filipinos, there's even fewer ones for Indonesians. So like the politics of that are
oh yeah.
Like maybe I don't feel as bad taking a role from a Chinese person because I'm like, none of us get enough representation, but you have a little more than us. But maybe controversial, but
Nah, totally. Kind of like the conflict I felt. I think a lot of our community felt when Raya dropped. When Raya and the Last Dragon dropped. We love everybody involved. I love Kelly Marie Tran, but I would have loved to have seen the Filipino Canadian, who I can't recall the actress's name, that was initially cast as Raya until they switched it over to Kelly Marie. And then, I love Aquafina, and I love just a lot of the other characters, Daniel Day Kim, just some of the other people that were involved. But yes, we thought it was initially supposed to be like a more Southeast Asian film, and it wasn't. But so there's that conflict.
I'm glad it wasn't just me, because I was like, who can I talk to about this? I was like,
feel me?
Thank you. Yeah, because
we're just early to the criticism chain. Like when Kubo and the Two Strings came out and everyone was talking about how wonderful it was. And I was like, why is everyone white? And nobody talked about it for like years, and it was up for every award. Everyone loved it. And then 2020 happened and they were like, wait, actually, I think that this is another thing where everyone's like, oh, Raya is the best. It's the most, it's beautiful. This is wonderful representation. And in like 5 years, people are going to be like, yeah, about that. Maybe not.
Okay, I'm so glad it's not just me, because I was like, yeah, I love Aquafina, but I'm like, you ain't Southeast Asian. Like, no offense, but you got that light skin. Like, you have, I don't know, like, there's that privilege, of like, oh, I was so mad, but I was also like not wanting to drag down other Asians, because I was
exactly.
like, yeah, we don't want to have crab mentality, but at the same time, I was like, how come China gets their own Disney film, but like Southeast Asia goes through a meat grinder Like, how come we have to get mashed into one film altogether? Like,
Oh yeah. No, that's real talk. And I will say the one benefit of that, after that all kind of went down, a lot of actors, and I think you and I share a lot of the same friends as well on the socials and stuff. But like on Facebook, we started like a Southeast Asian Facebook group of actors, filmmakers, and producers. And we're like, you know what? Again, here's just again Hollywood not trusting and having faith in us. So you know what? Let's band together. Let's start making films happen. Who do we know who are like, so people start putting actors lists together and they started sharing that around. There's like Excel spreadsheets. Shout out to my boy, Edward Hong, who does voiceovers, yeah, he put together another great voiceover sheet with different for BIPOC, and just the community, I feel, and especially I will say for our Filipino community, man, I feel a renaissance is brewing. Shout out to my Filipinx Barcada with Zedric and Denise Cabanella, the whole squad over there with them. Like, I think it just gave us more motivation, and I see with what the work you're doing with like Asian AF and Filipino AF, I love it. I can't wait to see a show and support. And because I have so many friends involved with all that, shout out to Tony Garbanzos, just the whole squad, man. Like, the time is now, and we got to start making our way. If they're not going to give it to us, we got to just write the material, get into those power positions to make these films happen. And just being confident and knowing ourselves, loving ourselves, and having trust in ourselves to do it. Can you speak so like going forward in your journey with what else with what you're doing, and just what you would like to see with our people in our community and going forward with this industry?
Yeah, just more, I guess. Yeah, like, of course it's nice to be the first, like Easter Sunday, the first Filipino.
Oh yeah.
Nice one day that there's not so much pressure on like one movie to be everything to everyone, like Crazy Rich Asians, like it's like no one movie can ever represent all Asians everywhere. So I would love just for there to be more, because when I'm like already anticipating the think pieces that whenever I hopefully supporting my parents goes big or something, all the people that are going to take me down, it's like, okay, well, like everyone else get out there, like, but obviously it's not as easy as that. But yeah, I'd love to see more on a bigger wish list. Like, I would love to see a stronger middle class and to like reduce the income gap. But maybe that might be out of a lot of our controls.
Love it. I love it. It's like when you're artists, you're empaths, and you feel what the world is going through, and you want to put in the art to help educate and help inspire. And so I thank you for doing supportive white parents and just everything else that you're doing. I love it because it's needed. We all need that. I'm going to throw it to Kat with our last question before we sign off. Kat, go ahead.
All right. Since we are part of the Nerds of Color, we always like to end a little nerd check. So what is it that you are super nerdy about and super into? You could give a TED talk on the topic if you were so given the slot.
Oh my gosh. I guess I have a few. I could nerd out about Southeast Asian studies in like pre-colonial era Philippines, like how women were represented in folk religion and, blah, 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 gender and sexuality. I could also give a TED talk about plants. I became a plant mom during the pandemic.
Yeah.
And then the last thing is like, I could nerd out about stocks. I'm not as into stocks anymore because I realized it was an obsession and I pulled back. But I could, I could nerd out a little bit about some, options and puts and calls and spreads and things like that.
Awesome. Well, okay. Well, save that for when I call you for financial advice. Can you tell us a fun plant fact? I'm a Gemini and I love fun facts.
Ooh, a plant fact. Oh my gosh. Well, I guess if your plants are like if your plants are having trouble, if you have vegetable plants and they're having trouble like making fruits like tomato plants or peppers, it can help to hand pollinate. It's very tedious, but I bought up myself a little paintbrush, and then you just like kind of put it in the flour to mimic like a proboscis or like a bee or something like that, to make sure the pollen gets the male and the female parts or whatever get where they need to go. Because before I started doing that, like I had a bunch of flowers and no tomatoes, and now I like have a lot more tomatoes. So that's a great fact.
Plant matchmaking. I love it. Yes.
Joy, thank you so much. I have so many more questions, but I know there's certain projects that you have coming up that you can't exactly talk on yet. So when those projects start to come into fruition, I would love to have you back and chat on them and just, again, shine a light on your journey, because I know it's still in process, and that's what we're here for. We're building our community that we want to have, to show love and show support, because we need that. I think, that will help create the change in the world and make a difference. So welcome to our ShoPowSho family.
Yes, thank you. I feel like we brushed the tip of the iceberg. Now I'm like, I need this TED Talk on Southeast Asian studies.
I seriously
need to know more about your time at Sesame Street. Like, did you meet Oscar the
Grouch? This is just part 1.
I haven't yet, but I have written for Oscar the Grouch, so I'm excited for when hopefully that'll come out.
Awesome.
Guys, I have like my picture of me meeting Oscar the Grouch when I was
my goodness.
4.
I have that conveniently ready.
Like, this is my notebook. And like, I have pictures, and this is my favorite picture of me, my brother, and my mom. And I'm like, look at her, I'm so excited to meet him. So you're like, Sesame Street. I was like, oh my God, she knows Oscar.
That's so sweet. What a great character, right?
It's the best.
I love it.
That's so cool. They wrote for Oscar. I love them.
Thank you. And I'm so grateful. Thank you so much for having me. I mean, I'm so grateful y'all exist and that you're doing this and uplifting each other and other Asian Americans and Filipinos. It's very inspiring to me.
Thank
but it's
you
so cool
much.
too. Like, we're gonna talk more about you when you leave, but like, it's just really cool to see just the ways that our stories are all similar because we're Filipino, but then the ways that everyone's journey is different and everyone's story is different, and everyone has those different life lessons and things that they can share through all of that. So this was great.
Awesome. So one last thing, that was the last question, but one last thing we'd like you to do for our audio listeners, to tell them how they can reach out to you. So if you can throw out some of your socials, I'll have it in the description below on YouTube and on the article that'll be up on the nerdsofcolor.org. So for our audio listeners, how can they reach out to Joy, and anything else you want to promote, throw out there? And then again, we would love to have you back as always, because you're part of our family.
Oh, thank you. You can just find me on Twitter and Instagram at Joy Regullano, and I will talk more about things whenever I am allowed to talk about them. Thank you.
I love it. Thank you so much. All right, boom. There you go, Miss Joy Regullano. So sweet. Writer, producer, actor, everything. Just such a sweet soul. I love it. And represent for the community. If you see, now that we're starting to get out of our homes, and make sure you're vaccinated, go see an Asian AF, a Filipino AF show if you're in the Cali area, California. I know some people shouldn't say Cali. That's where people like, nah, you ain't really from California if you say Cali. Anyway, I like to say it because I like hip hop, and that's what we say in hip hop sometimes. So check it out.
Yeah, you're also not from California, so there you go.
I was born in San Diego. I still rep California, man. That's where I came into the world. My roots are there. So a great one, man. What'd y'all think with Joy? I just love her soul and her vibe and her energy. It was lit.
Yeah, no, I always love to hear from Filipinos doing it out there. Support for sure. It's always good to see. Since especially it's better now, but in the past and still to some extent today, it's just not a nurturing place for, AAPI women.
Yeah, women. Yeah, y'all got it hard, and I'm hoping we can make changes and differences with all that. Yeah, Tina, how about for you? How was that? I know you had the book out because you amazingly had this Sesame Street picture at the right moment. Like, wow, what?
I know, right?
Things in my book, like my Jack Skeleton sticker and my horse bookmark, and and my Sauron sticker. I just keep things here.
You're like a magpie. You just like collect things in your nest and take them out and look at them sometimes.
I'm trying not to do that, but yes, this is one of my favorite pictures of all time of me and my brother and my mom meeting Oscar in California, in Cali. When I was really young. I don't know. It was like a Sesame Street store, and I'll never find it ever again. But yeah, he was like animatronic and everything. Like he came out of his trash can. I love Sesame Street. Anyway.
No, so viewers, if you know what she's talking about, comment below. Let us know where we can find this store.
Yeah. It was a Sesame Street store or some kind of toy store, and they had an animatronic Oscar the Grouch that would pop out and say hi to you at this mall somewhere. So back in the early or late 90s. Yeah. I'm like, how old am I? I don't know. No, but Joy was great. I love that, like, her passion for writing was like, she likes making people feel things. Yes. And as someone whose guilty pleasure is to cry during movies, TV shows, and books, I really felt that. Like, yes, you like to make people feel things.
You are the target demographic.
I am. I want to cry, please. So that was really great. And I think she said some really awesome things about like, it's not just about, raising the diversity bar and like, casting these diversity roles in companies. It's really the power balance that needs to be changed for it to be truly diverse. And I was like, that. So yeah, I thought that was really powerful. And again, like, we need to have her back because we need this TED Talk on Southeast Asian
Yes, I want this TED Talk about the Southeast Asian studies. Like, I need to see. I mean, I know, there are some stereotypes that may or may not be accurate for people who take those kinds of studies who don't happen to be AAPI. But it never occurred to me that would also extend to the faculty, because obviously what would you do with that degree? Teach with it.
Let's tell it. We should have a panel discussion, I think, on a future episode in that regard. I think that would be great. Really cool. And having been on a bunch this past month, that's gonna be
an episode.
Yeah, and I got some voices already. I think that would be amazing for that, because as y'all know, we're just coming out of API Heritage Month, and I've been on some of those panels, and there's some where I would have loved that conversation to have been expanded a lot more because it was limited in its time. So that would be amazing to continue it on. So and just that nuggets that we're all. Was that Kat? I'm sorry, Tina.
It's time for some tea episodes when we really.
I know, right?
About we're not just celebrating, we're digging deep. I'm ready for that.
I'm with you on that. And I think we have Kat frozen right now. Is Kat frozen on your end too?
I think so.
All right, Kat, if you're hearing us, we love you. Let's just amazing stuff with Joy. I also wanted to add that I enjoyed her kind of also telling what we all go through. She kind of followed that father path, and there was that difference, and then making him happy again when in college, and that journey that was, therapeutic in a way for that connection to happen. I'd love it. And it just, again, another person that shows we've all gone through it, and then finding your voice, having the courage to speak up for yourself when it can be so hard and so difficult. And to get a success story like hers is I think benefiting and helpful. So I love it. And I got to know that Kat got kicked out. She's having connection issues. We love you, Kat. So for Kat, we're gonna sign off now because we're finishing this up. So I'll just say for Kataphorric, for Kat, is it at Kataphorric? Tina is her handles.
Kataphorric on Instagram and Twitter.
Yes.
And then we also have a ShoPowSho Instagram and TikTok. So check us out there at ShoPowSho. We also have a coffee. So if you want to buy us a coffee, want to chit chat with us more, check us out on Patreon. We have some extra extra bits with our guests. We have ShoPowSho and Tell, which is always a lot of fun. So yeah, you can check that out on Patreon, or if you just love us, you can buy us a coffee.
Hell yeah, I love it. Thank you for that. Thank you for the one up, because I was trying to remember it all since Kat handles that. for you, Tina, tell them how they can reach out to you and your amazingness and the stuffy spa that's popping off. I love it. I miss you so much, girl. Tell them how they can reach out to you.
I am Viva Valentina, and you can find me on Instagram and TikTok at viva.valentina. I'm also on Twitter and chess.com at Viva Valentina XO.
Yes, that's my girl, Viva Valentina. Mm-hmm. Make sure you follow her, give her all the love. She's so amazing. And to my girl, Kataphorric, love you as well. The Amazing Ates, follow them, show them love. I'm your boy, Kuya P. You can follow me at Strange Since 1977, as well as at Temple Far East. Over at the Nerds of Color, where we give you pop culture representation from the PLC representation within pop culture. And of course, at ShoPowSho, that's under that umbrella. And also at the NRW and at No Release Wednesday, where nerds rule the world, my other crew. We're just doing so many things. Something or Nothing podcast, the Blur Dad podcast, You're So Cool with Rob Medina. Man, it's just a craziness. I got so much stuff going on. Wartime Allies. I got interviews with F9 coming up soon. The House Next Door, Meet the Blacks 2, Us Again. We're so busy right now. It's insane. I love it, but we love you. And that's what it's all about. Content out the yin yang. Tina, I love you. Mahakita, as always. Mahakta, salamat. We out of here. Boom.
Regullano. I'm a writer, actor, comedian, plant mom, and I'm going to be guesting on the ShoPowSho. Check it out. Hi, I'm Joy Regullano. I'm a writer, actor, comedian, plant mom, and my Filipino heritage is important to me because it's my identity, it's my family, it's my history, my culture, my past, present, and future.